Welcome to another collaboration between the Bladtcast and Grit and Script. I am Christian Bladt, and with me, once again, is the great Bill Narducci. Bill, how are you? Of Stump the Bill fame, by the way, as I should say.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And very excited to be joined by our guest, I was going to say a past guest on Stump the Bill, but I guess he would have been a contestant. Do we want to spoil whether or not he stumped you or
We can ask him.
Okay. All right. We'll see what he thinks. Bennett Yellin, who we can go through a number of credits, but one of the writers of Dumb and Dumber, I think, is great right at the top of the food pyramid, and then we can work our way down. Bennett, did you stump the bill when you were on Stump the Bill?
I not only did not stump the bill, but my score was so humiliating that I actually entered the witness relocation program. So,
I did very poorly on it, so much so that one of the other hosts gave me advice for next time. But you'll notice there hasn't been a next time. It was I just knew, like, when it got to movie quotes, I'm like, oh, I'm really bad at that, and I showed it so people can find that. So Bennett, obviously, there's a lot of things we want to talk about, but as I'm putting it at the top of the food pyramid, I feel like there's such an interesting backstory to Dumb and Dumber. And Bill was talking to me a little bit before we got started that how you got started working with Peter Farrelly, who obviously I'm a fan of both of the Farrelly brothers, but his book, The Comedy Writer, I read, I don't know, a couple decades ago when I first moved to LA, and it was great. So talk a little bit about how you got to know Peter.
Okay. Or you could just ask Bill because he knows.
Yeah, Bill, how did he get to know Peter?
Well, they met in a coffee shop in 1978.
Okay, that is not true. And it's totally on. Now I've stumped the bill.
Yes.
So I met Peter and I met the very first day of graduate school. I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, and then I was raised Orthodox Jewish, and I went to UCLA. And when I was done with UCLA, I said, you know what, I got a BA in fiction. I thought, oh, you know what, I'll get an MFA, and I'm going to teach writing at a university in the Midwest somewhere and get a corduroy jacket with the patches and a pipe. Yeah. And that's going to be my life. So in order to do that, I decided to go to an MFA fiction program at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And the first day of school, first class, that's where I met Peter. And in the classroom, we immediately knew that we had. This is a lot. Do you want to hear how much time do we have?
we have tons of time.
We have lots of time, and I did ask the question, so I'm happy to take the answer. However,
you can retract it at any point during at any point.
I'll ring this bell. It'll mean that your time has expired,
okay, and the check will arrive. So, I was very out of my element. I was this Orthodox Jewish kid, and I hadn't been away from my family, and so I was kind of nervous since first day of class. And we had a teacher, a sort of a heavyset guy named George Cuomo, and we had an assignment for the first day of class. We were supposed to bring in the first page of a short story that we'd written, and we're going to go around the room and read our first pages, and then we were going to discuss what we can glean just about the story from that first page. And Peter and I were sitting across from each other. Again, I know nobody. And we read somebody's first page, and the teacher, George Como, said, I like this first page, but, and I have one very big but. And Peter and I looked at each other at this crappy pun, and we burst out laughing because he did. And he's like, what is it? We're like, nothing. Right after class, we met in the hallway, and I said, it was big, wasn't it? He said, and so we knew that we were instantly matched by a stupid pun, and we met each other. We said hello, and I think, but like a day or two later, he came over to my apartment, and he had yellow legal pads and started reading me from outside Providence.
Oh, wow.
Which he was writing at the time. But we were instant friends. And not just instant friends. We knew we had the same stupid sense of humor. And at a certain point in the program, it was a 3-year program, but we said, you know what, we both share, and we have obviously we like the same movies and everything. Let's write a movie together. I had no connection to the film business in Los Angeles. He's from Rhode Island. His dad was a physician there. So neither of us had any connection to the film, but we said, let's write a comedy. Let's take our stupid sense of humors and mix them and make a movie. So we wrote this movie. And when I think back to this whole thing, because this led to our careers, I think of like what was luck. I'm always thinking about in my life, like I'm the luckiest human being on the planet, because I really feel that. And I also feel like I'm always exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm saying that from the perspective of 65 years old. But if we hadn't written that script, and if we hadn't done with it what I'm about to tell you we did with it, we wouldn't be here talking about Dumb and Dumber. So there was that element of it, that we wrote it, and that we put it into the world. This stupid script started the whole ball rolling. But what happened was we wrote the script, and it was called Dust to Dust, and it was this silly comedy about it was basically John Candy and Bill Murray. And they get a job at a down and out funeral home that's also that's smuggling drugs. And
as most funeral homes do, by the way.
Of course,
allegedly.
Of course. That's how they make most of their money, and not from the funereal services. So we had the script. And it was funny. We thought it was funny. And what are you supposed to do with it? I mean, we were just like everybody else who writes a script, except we weren't in a Starbucks and we were in Western Massachusetts. So Peter was on a date in New York. And this girl said to him, "You'll never guess who moved in next door to my parents in Alpine, New Jersey, Eddie Murphy." We're talking about Eddie Murphy. And I was like, "Well, you're kidding me." And she goes, "Yeah. He said, "You ever see him?" And she said, "Yeah, he came out to like get his paper," and he said, and he gave her literally, printed out a copy of Dust to Dust, and he said, "If you ever see him, give it to him." She called a few days later and said, he was washing his car, and I ran across the street and handed it to him. Again, this could not happen today. She would have been tackled by 50.
Also, Eddie Murphy wouldn't have been washing his car either. So it happened at the right time, So
I mean,
that's
everything was crazy the way this worked out. Exactly. And so, and then meanwhile, I had come back for the holidays, the Christmas or Hanukkah holidays. I came back to Los Angeles, and I knew that my sister Freda, and yes, my sister Freda Felcher is named after my sister Freda.
I love that.
Oh wow.
I'm sorry to say, or maybe I'm happy to say, did not know what her namesake quite was until about 7 months ago.
Oh my God.
Which, thank God. I mean, my parents are gone now. So, and I knew that Freda would go folk dancing, and she knew David Zucker. And again, we're talking like 1985, at the end of 85, the end of 84. So Eddie Murphy is the biggest star on the planet because he's just done Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Right. And the Zuckers are huge because they're about to release Top Secret. And so I asked Freda, would you give our script to David to read? And she said, sure. And so again, in this step-by-step process of, if Pete hadn't asked her to give the script to Eddie Murphy, if Eddie Murphy hadn't taken the script, if my sister Freda hadn't asked David Zucker if he'd read the script, and if he hadn't taken the script, we wouldn't be here talking about this. Eddie Murphy read it, loved it. David Zucker read it, loved it, gave it to his brother Jerry and their partner, the late, wonderful, oh my God,
Jim Abrams.
Jim Abramson, yeah. And they asked us to. Well, this is the best part of it, actually. So here's what happened with Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy loved it, and then came back to Los Angeles, and they were looking for writers named Peter Farrelly and Bennett Yellin. He just remembered the names of the writers. He didn't have a copy of it. I think he left a copy in New Jersey. And the LA Times decided they were doing an article on Eddie Murphy. It was called the Eddie Murphy Script Derby. It's all about how everyone wants to write a movie for Eddie Murphy. And the article, I wish I had it right here. Darn it, I didn't know we were going to talk about this. It starts out, darn. I usually have a copy right nearby, but it starts out with Eddie Murphy was looking out his Alpine, New Jersey home when he saw a sight that made his heart sink. It was a neighbor coming across the street with a script. And then it changed the sex of the neighbor. It says the neighbor gave him the script called Dust to Dust. Murphy read it. He likes it. And so they planted that so that we would get, oh, there it is.
Wow.
My God.
The internet is a beautiful thing.
That is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Oh, except
And
there you
David
go.
Finley is the big producer now. It's
Your
crazy.
window. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
On a recent, Eddie Murphy glanced out the living room of his Alpine, New Jersey home and noticed the neighbor standing. There you go. Okay. So that's what they did.
Oh, and now we've got a commercial.
And a
for Owen
commercial
Wilson.
for Stick. So we get it all. And so my father read this article. This was in the LA Times, and he sent it to me, and I got it in Amherst, and I opened it up and I said, what the hell? And we called Paramount and said, hey, this is our script. They said, we've been looking for you. They planted our names in this to have us call in. But that's how we got started with Eddie. And we came to LA, and Eddie Murphy wanted us to write he wanted us to write a Robin Hood comedy with teenagers. In the meantime, we ended up writing something. We came to town. We had a project with Eddie Murphy and a project with the Zuckers, and no agents. The first agent to come running to us was Richard Lovett, who is now the head of creative artists. He was a junior agent at creative artists. He's now the head of it. He's been the head of it for years. That's how he got started. The short version.
Well,
wow.
I mean, that's the fascinating version because, I think that, there are those steps along the way where Eddie Murphy's like, I can't really take this script from you, and David Zucker, so the fact, and I think the time frame we're talking about, people might be a little bit, more receptive to it. And so obviously that script, nothing actually happens with it, but everybody likes it. And then they start meeting with you based on that.
Yes. But I laughed because when I saw the movie Green Book, which Peter wrote and directed.
Yes.
In the opening scene, there's a joke taken from Dust to Dust. And I was the only one in the theater. Like I went, ah! Turned around and looked at me.
What was the joke?
The joke was, what's his name? Who's the main actor?
Viggo Mortensen?
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen pulls up to a curb and he empties a trash can and puts it over, because he pulls up to the curb where there's a fire hydrant. He empties the trash can, he puts it over the fire hydrant. So it just looks like an upside. Yeah. I was right from Dust to Dust, which I loved. Yeah.
I thought Eddie Murphy talked about someone giving him a script on Letterman.
He did. He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And we made, as soon as that happened, we this is back in the days of the VHS and Betamax and everything. We recorded it, and then we went out and tried to make a little movie to get Eddie Murphy, to get David Letterman to have us on the show to talk about it. And we did make the movie, but I don't think we ever got it to the people at the David Letterman. It was ridiculous. I'm embarrassed to think of what we put on it, but yeah. And again, my point is, if we hadn't written the script, if it hadn't been funny, if we hadn't asked these people to read it or asked people to ask them to read it, we wouldn't be here. But those are the things we did. Those are the actual practical. That was our part in our career, and that's what I want people to know is, like, do those things. Be outrageous. Ask people,
But as you said, the most important thing was the script was funny. Eddie Murphy could have read a script that his neighbor gave to him and been like, all right, now I have to hide when I see my neighbor because she gave me a terrible script.
I have to move.
Right. No more Bubble Hill for me,
Yes.
So,
how'd you guys know how to write a script? Like a first act, was because Sid Field wasn't around.
We didn't read a script. We didn't like I remember reading how William Goldman was hired to write. He was hired to write the movie Charlie, to do a rewrite of Charlie, and he ran to Times Square to a bookstore and he found one little ragged book about how to write screenplays, and he kind of followed that, and then he said, "What the hell is this?" and threw it out because it didn't make any sense to him. We didn't know. I mean, we honestly didn't know. I'm raised on cinema. I mean, I was born in 1959, and so I watched so many movies, and I love movies and television, and my parents would take me to the movie theaters, and then I'd go to the movies by myself or with my sisters. So I knew the language of cinema, and I just knew it. I knew just from watching a movie how long a scene should last and things like that, and that's all that I applied to it. were just those, and I think
so. You instinctively knew there was a first act, a second act, a third act.
Yes and no. I not at the technical save the cat conscious level of and Sid Fields and which it breaks it down to to make it seem so elementary. But we just knew we got, and I think that also suggests why we were able to pull it off. Why the script was funny enough and good enough, because it was very funny, that we were able to pull it off.
Well, and that's impressive because there are filmmakers today who don't realize that there's supposed to be 3 acts. I saw a Batman movie that had a 4th act to it for some reason. So, but no names. I
wonder what that could be.
I don't know. Could it be Christopher Nolan? It's not. But the one of the things that Bill had mentioned that this doesn't show up anywhere when I was doing research on you. You wrote a sequel to one of my favorite movies as a kid. It was not a blockbuster, but Dragnet. I loved Dragnet as a kid with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd. And,
you're the minority there.
I was waiting for the sequel, but boy, it didn't come, did it, Bennett?
I wish they had made it, because it was such a good script. And the best thing about that, the two best things, and they're two fantastic things. That I'll tell you how that's related to Dumb and Dumber. But the best thing about it is that we got to work with Tom Mankiewicz, who I don't think he wrote the first. I know he directed the first movie. He may have done a pass, but Tom Mankiewicz, who wrote a bunch of the Roger Moore Bond movies, and Mankiewicz was one of the greatest people I ever met in the business. I think he was Herman Mankiewicz's nephew, I think, or and Joseph Mankiewicz's.
But by the way, I'll jump in. The first Dragnet was written by Tom Mankiewicz, Dan Aykroyd, and the great Alan Zweibel, one of the original SNL writers, co-creator of It's Gary Shandling Show, etc. He's not here, so I don't have to give any more of his credits. But he's a great guy. I talked to him for 2.5 hours once, and he's never wanted to do another interview with me. I don't know why.
I mean, look at that writing cast is unbelievable. 3 knockouts. The script we did was. It's one of my favorite things that we ever did, and we tried to even take stuff from it and put it in Dumb and Dumber 2. Well, we wrote a whole sequence that we lifted right from it in Dumb and Dumber 2. But as a result of that was for Universal, and as a result of that, getting to work with Mankiewicz he was such a gentleman and so interesting and so fun, and he'd just sit around and tell anecdotes about writing Bond movies, and I'd be like, just talk more. I don't want to go and write. But because that was at Universal, somebody at Universal gave John Hughes that script to read. And as a result of him reading that script, he called us into his office and he said, guys, I read Dragnet. It's hilarious. Pitch me a movie, basically. And we pitched him Dumb and Dumber. And that's how we ended up writing Dumb and Dumber was originally through John Hughes. We wrote it, and his deal was ending. Usually, if somebody has a production deal in a studio, when the deal is over, all the stuff that they develop just goes into a crevasse and will never be found, because no studio other studio will say, oh, we want to take this movie that was developed at Universal and we want to make it, especially if it fails,
Yeah.
So, so after a couple of years, he went and did the next thing he did was Home Alone at Fox. And after a couple of years, we went back to John and we said, John, we really like Dumb and Dumber, and can we take it around and try and set it up? He said, yeah, absolutely. But I'm not I'm not producing it or anything. So, and if you use me to set it up, you have to pay me $1 million. So
he needed the money.
Right. So we said, fantastic. We just saved $1 million on our budget, which was small to start out with. But that's what generated Dumb and Dumber was John.
So just because I want to get the timeline straight. So the point where it's actually written at the very beginning, when is that it's written and, with, for John Hughes?
I'm going to say 1990.
Okay. So It is clearly not written with Jim Carrey in mind.
Oh,
because
no.
there's not even In Living Color for him to be the white guy on In Living Color, so it's
no.
And I obviously it is one of those things. I rewatched it last night because I hadn't seen it in a little while. It is hard, it's so hard to imagine, like, because you read about other actors possibly attached to it. It's like, it's just like, how does this work with anybody else? So so you get to bring it around and you save $1 million. I don't know whatever happened to John Hughes after that, poor guy. Who's interested in it at that point?
Well, I can tell you who wasn't interested.
Oh yeah, tell me that.
Yeah, everybody. Zero. It was not only was it turned down by everybody. You have to imagine back then, a movie called Dumb and Dumber. There wasn't a genre of stupid. I mean, so already that was a strike against it. Also, because we were attaching Pete as the director, and Pete had directed nothing. I mean, he didn't have nothing. He didn't have a Super 8 movie or a slide that he took. It was so. There's an attachment of this guy who has never done it before. It was not a pretty package. And anyway, except that we kept 2 other times we retitled it and sent it because back then there weren't computers, and so we thought, because all coverage, like scripts would get submitted to studios, would get covered, but the coverage was like typed. It wasn't like they didn't keep track, we thought. So we changed the title. One of the titles was a power tool is not a toy, which was the I can't remember the name of the group. There was a group that was a song of theirs. We just liked the sound of it, and we put it on and we sent it out again, rejected by everyone again. And then I think the other time was called Go West was the other title. Sent it out, nothing. But somehow these guys, there was a little movie company called the Motion Picture Corporation of America, and they were in Santa Monica. Somehow they got a copy of the script and they read it and they liked it, and they were okay with Pete directing it, with somebody who'd never directed before. So they said, we'll make this movie. And the moment they did, now the snowball became a boulder. There was momentum to this thing, and I cannot remember how it got to New Line. I'm not sure, but I believe that Michael DeLuca was the one who read it, because Michael DeLuca was like the at New Line, and he was and he read it and he thought it was funny, and they had just made The Mask with Jim Carrey. It hadn't come out yet, but they'd made it, so they knew they liked Jim Carrey, and so New Line agreed to partner up with Motion Picture Corporation, and that created the momentum to get it done. Yeah.
And so having worked on a project with Jim Carrey, that would lend itself to the easy deduction that it seemed like, that he would actually be great for this.
Oh yeah. Although it's funny, when I heard that I was going to meet Jim Carrey, I think he had been cast. Yeah, he'd already been cast. I was going to meet him. I said, well, I better go out and see. Ace Ventura was in the theaters.
Right.
And I ran to see Ace Ventura, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Because it's a deranged performance.
Yes.
He doesn't. There's not one line that isn't delivered with where he goes into a face or whatever. And I've since come to appreciate the movie, but going to see it like this is the person that's going to be in your film. And I'd heard of it. I think I was a little aware of him from In Living Color, but I was supposed to meet him that night, and the first thing he said when I shook his hand, it was like as though he was reading my mind. He said, like, I just want to reassure you, I am not going to be doing Ace Ventura in this movie.
Oh wow.
For Lloyd, yeah. And I'm like, how are you reading my? And then I remember he was so excited because he had just gotten from New Line VHS with the first scene in the Mask, the first where special effects explosive scene where with the landlady and the hallway and everything like that. And he had just watched it seen it, the special effects from ILM. He says, "You guys got to see this," and he put it in, and we were looking at each other like, "Oh my God, this is it was unbelievable."
Yeah. So obviously it seems like, we're talking about a number of fortuitous incidents, a couple of some very convenient timing for you that this comes along at this point. People understand what the potential is for Jim Carrey, but it's not 5 years later where all of a sudden it would become a much bigger deal. I assume that must have impacted how much money a studio was willing to spend if Ace Ventura was already out and they saw they saw what this could be. It is a very different performance, and I think that obviously Jeff Daniels is such a huge part, the two of them together, because if you have one guy who is interesting and works well, it's not going to really matter. We can probably think of some movies where it's like, oh yeah, the one guy's good in that. So talk about sort of the process of actually, going into production on it. You meet this guy and, they've got Jeff Daniels in it. And I love some of the cast that I forgot was in here, because it's an early, I was gonna say it's an 80s movie, but it's an early 90s movie and it needed a bad guy. So of course Charles Rocket is in it. There's nobody I like better than Charles Rocket as somebody pointing a gun in the third act of a movie, the late Charles Rocket, by the way.
Late Charles Rocket.
Yeah. I thought it was, there's so many times where you see him and stuff. It's like, oh my God, it's Charles Rocket.
Yeah.
The guy who said fuck on Saturday Night Live.
Yes. Got banned from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
For the F word,
So talk a little bit about, actually, all right, now this thing's going to get made.
This is where I get a little vague about, not intentionally, but in terms of memory, because I wasn't involved. I only visited the set for a little bit of time during the making of it. So it's only in retrospect that I can, but I remember because Pete and Bobby both directed it. They directed just like the Zuckers would direct it. And the way the Zuckers and Jim Abrams usually worked was that somebody was working with one person would be working on set with the actors, and then the other people would be back at the video village looking at the footage and everything like that. And then there'd be a talk about how's it look and all that stuff. And I think that's what Pete and Bob did as well on this, because I know the night before shooting, and again, neither of them knew anything about how to do this, but the night before shooting, Pete was on the floor of his hotel room in a fetal position. He was having a panic attack. Like, how can we, I have no idea how to do this. I remember he called David Zucker. He said, "I need advice." And David Zucker said, "After the joke, make sure you shoot a reaction shot of some always get a reaction shot of somebody after the joke, because go to them," which we did a lot. And I know that when they got on the set with this crew, the first thing they said to everybody was, and this was so smart, and it wasn't even strategic. It was just instinctual. Was, "We have never done this. We have got you we have hired the best people for this. We want your expertise and we want your advice, and let's make a great movie together." And that just created, let's help these guys rather than who are these guys, and it was a perfect thing to say. And again, you have to remember that, like, for us, we write this movie and then we make this movie, and we're making the movie, and there is nothing there's nothing in the doing of it that would in any way suggest that we could see 30 years later that this film is still in the public's in the zeitgeist, that it gets quoted. There's no way. We weren't geniuses, or we weren't so confident that we were gonna. This film came out, and although when we were making it, we'd look at it and we thought it was funny. We knew it was funny. We were getting funny stuff. But is it going to be a hit? We don't know. Is it going to last? No one knows. It has become, when it came out, by the way, it was pretty much savaged by the critics. I think, maybe.
I mean, also Robert Shea hated it, right?
Who?
The president of New Line, Robert Shea, hated it.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, Bob Shea at Pete likes to tell this story. At the big opening night at the Cinerama Dome, Bob Shea gets up and makes a speech, and he says, I was educated. I can't remember. He says, I'm a Harvard guy, whatever. Like, and this is not my kind of movie. Like, instead of, we're so glad we made this, it was like an apology for it. I remember Peter's father was like almost climbing over the seats to take down Bob Shea. But to Bob Shea's, look, God bless you, Bob Shea. Your company made this movie, and you made this movie, and thank you, Bob Shea. But
I just sort of talking about 30 years later in the chat, checking in from across the pond, Chris Tudhill. Like any great interviewer, I just have to say I love that movie. It's ridiculous how funny it is today. Most comedy loses something over time, but it's a perfect comedy. It's absolutely true that there are definitely comedies that you watch like, boy, this was so funny, especially if it was like something that's funny when I was a kid, and you're like, what was I laughing at exactly? But again, like I said, I watched this last night, and not too much time goes by without watching Airplane, and Val Kilmer passed away sadly a few months ago, so of course I had to watch Top Secret again. And there are those movies, and Bill, you could probably name a few that it's like, oh,
Tommy
Boy is a perfect example. Yeah.
It's we didn't know it was timeless when we were writing it. We were
Sure.
just writing what we thought was funny. It constantly blows my mind that we latched on to something that lasted. Because I mean, even talking about Academy Award winning movies, and I have a whole thing about the Academy Awards, but I think that's so ridiculous. Like, nobody 30 days after the Academy Awards, no one remembers the winners. Nobody remembers the winners. It's just a big commercial to wrangle some extra dough out of movies. But nobody remembers Academy Award winning movies. Why are they remembering Dumb and Dumber? Well, thank God, because it's a funny movie and it makes people laugh. And also, I think a big part of its success was it came out during when Blockbuster and when VHS home videos, and so people watched it at home and they watched it with their families, and that was a very it imprinted on them in that way, and now they watch them with their kids and they watch them with their grandkids, and we just managed to appear at that time where VHS, so people could watch it over and over again. How many people told me, my brothers and I watched it over and over and over again, and I've heard that many, many, many times. We were just so lucky.
Yeah, and especially in the Blockbuster age, it's like, well, I have to bring this movie back tomorrow, so let me watch it 3 times because I gotta get my 250 worth or whatever. Chris Tudhill, again, I thought this was relevant. He watched this movie 6 months ago with his brother, and we laughed just as much as when we were young. Either that's genius writing, or we are just as dumb as before. Chris, how about both? Little column A, little column B.
It's not an either or. It's a both. There's no question.
Did John Hughes ever reach out after the movie was a big hit and regretted taking his name off it, or?
Yeah, no, he never. He did not reach out. I wonder if he didn't reach out because of that. I know that he opening that same month I think it opened right against us, was Miracle on 34th Street, which was a remake that he wrote, and he produced and wrote. So I don't know, but I would like to think that he was happy for us. I think he was. He was a good guy.
That was one of the Fox's highest testing movies ever, and it was such a bomb. And
you're talking about Miracle on 34th Street?
Yeah, and they had all these Christmas cards. They had to shred them. It was such a disaster.
It opened December 21st, 1994, so I believe it's a week after Dumb and Dumber opened.
Ooh. Yeah, I think we're like the 17th or the 19th. Yeah,
right. So,
yeah.
So obviously, it has the success where you're able to, people are able to watch us in their house time and time again. And I think it's interesting because it's one of 3 films that was adapted into an animated series that all premiered the same fall. Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. None of which featuring Jim Carrey, by the way. But I know that this one had the great Matt Frewer, who was Max Headroom. I mean, I sometimes you hate to boil an actor down to one thing, but it's like, well, they're going to know who he is from that. So,
yeah.
Cool. So, and my understanding, because I did look on IMDb, is that you had some involvement with the animated series.
Yes, this is a dark period. This is a dark period in my life.
Okay, good. I'm glad I asked about it, Bennett.
Yes, thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, Barbara Walters.
We'll come out on the other side,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about the
close-up
haunted.
of me?
We'll talk about the haunted mansion. Oh yeah, that's actually a good point.
Get a
Yeah,
close up of me now as I tell this story. I'm kidding. I was kidding about it. No, don't go. Well, go back because I was. There was a period in my life when I could not control my excesses, and so this was a period. And they thought that it would be great to drop one of the writers of the movie into the animated show as like the showrunner or whatever. I'd never done anything in television. I had never run a show, nothing remotely close to it. Would be like saying, Bennett, why don't you do this brain surgery today? That's it. And unfortunately, I had been doing a lot of other things the night before. And by the way, and just I am sober 23 years, so that'll just give you,
right. But then quick math will be like, wait, this is before 23 years. This is
1995.
longer ago than that.
Yeah, right. So it was. I was so not prepared for the job. I wasn't qualified for the job, and I remember I would go into the office and crawl under the desk and close the door and just cover my ears and try, because the phone kept ringing. I had no assistant to answer the calls.
Wow.
It was a terrible experience, and I really feel like it was an awful thing that I was placed in that. And I mean, I did it, and the awfulness was me, which I take full responsibility for. But I remember this. I had to deal with standards and practices at NBC. I think it was NBC. It could have been ABC, but I think it was NBC.
I think it's ABC, but
ABC.
I'll confirm.
And I remember for the pilot, I got a phone call from this very sweet lady at their standards of practice. She says, you have to cut. There's a scene where they're in their van and they stick one of them. I think Lloyd sticks his head out of the van and all these things smash into his face one after another in typical cartoon fashion. Sure. And one of those things was a flashing railroad warning sign. And she said, you have to cut the railroad warning sign. I said, why? And she goes, because it implies they didn't stop for the train. and that was 1995 standards and practices.
And yes, it was ABC, and this is for Hanna-Barbera,
Yes.
So it's like, at least at that point, you're like, oh my God, if I'm doing a cartoon, I'm doing it with Hanna-Barbera. All right.
Did you work in that awesome building off of Lancaster?
Yes, off of on Ventura, off the freeway. Yes, we did. And in fact, like in the first week, maybe the first couple of days that I was there, they said, we want you to meet some of our people. And who did I meet? A young Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Who was there. Yeah. And I also had they had great merchandise. And I bought this fantastic Johnny Quest briefcase that I had for years. And I love this thing until it was literally taken from my side as I was checking out at the George V Hotel, the nicest hotel in Paris, France. I had it by my feet. And I'm signing the checkout to check out, and I reached down again, and someone took my Johnny Quest briefcase.
Oh no!
An inside job. I know it.
Yeah.
Well, if now there's the Parisian with the Johnny Quest.
I hope because they smoked, they probably died from cancer.
You know what, Bennett? We can only hope, can't we?
Or got hit by a citron.
So what's the timeline sort of between this dark page that I made you visit and stuck on
Barbara Walters?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Timeline in terms of like when I got sober.
Well, no. When's Stuck on You?
Stuck on You was 2002.
Okay. All right.
And I got sober in 2002. And Stuck on You. I remember I said to Peter and Bobby. I'd seen this movie called Chained for Life, this torrid 50s melodrama that starred conjoined twins, Daisy and Violet Hilton. Astonishing that there are conjoined twins who actually star in movies, but this was the 50s, which I guess was exploiting that. And the idea of In Chain for Life, I thought it was hilarious. I mean, it's not campy, but I thought it was campy. Was that these two sweet girls? One of them is dating this nice guy, and the other one's dating a terrible. Oh, that's that's a whole different movie. Yeah,
I like that it's called Chain for Life. Yeah.
And the other one is dating this good for nothing, no good Nick. There you go. That's the first time that was said on this planet today. So
that's good though. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the no good Nick, he's always beating her up and whatever, and she ends up.
Oh my God!
So he's beating two people up basically, and one of them kills him in self-defense, and they both go on trial for murder. And I just said, this is a ridiculous movie. I said, we should take this and make a movie out of this idea of Chain for Life. There they are.
And I think I found the accurate Chain for Life. I was a little too quick on the trigger finger trying to show off my Google skills. Yeah.
I have the Criterion DVD if you want to borrow it, Christian.
Have you seen it, Bill?
No, I've never seen this.
And I wonder if it was ever when they put it in the theaters, they said fantastic double feature. But that's what inspired Stuck on You, and we worked. I worked on the story with them, and then came back in to do like a punch up. But and when we were writing it, we were writing it for, and at a certain point, Woody Allen was attached. I cannot remember if we had the other actor yet, and he said, I'll do this movie, but just don't show me on the toilet.
Now I'm trying to remember. I'm like, have we ever seen Woody on the toilet in a movie?
No,
we haven't. Yeah,
Notoriously insane with that. There's on the Gilbert podcast, the guy that directed Bad Santa, Terry Zwigoff, talked about how he got food poisoning and how it was like the worst thing to use his toilet. He talks about it like it's like a Normandy. It's really funny. I always thought it was Gary Shandling and Woody Allen, but that was just like a false internet rumor or something like that.
It may have been at some point. I mean, when we were writing it, we were also writing it for Jack Nicholson, and then that changed to Cher. So that all got spun around too. So Jack Nicholson as the actor that they get involved with, and then became Cher.
I think it's one of the best movies of the 2000s. I think it's massive.
It's very underrated, and what I love about it is it's very sweet. And to me, knowing the brothers, Peter and Bobby, to me it was a Valentine for them to each other. That's what I felt about it. That's why I like it so much. Yeah, and those guys are very funny, and I have a cameo in it. This is funny because the cameo. So. They finally said, I said, when are you putting me in something? He said, we're going to put you in this. So I arrived, they were shooting it in Miami. And I go, what are my lines? They go, here's your line. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I play like a chroma key technician who's advising them because they're both like in a blue chroma, or one of them is in a chroma key blue jumpsuit so they can make them disappear. And here's the line. And I'm like, I'm saying it to both of them. With chroma key, the camera picks up every color except blue. So Bob, as far as the audience is concerned, you don't exist. That's my fucking. So we start shooting it, and it's a mouthful of boring whatever. And Pete goes, Bennett, faster. What? Faster? With chroma key, the camera. So
I remember Matt Damon's like, is it possible to put him behind a plant? That's what we did on the plays. It's so funny.
And then, so of course, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I know they have a problem with that ending, but I think it's a perfect ending. They tried to get Matt Damon, but to me, it's a perfect movie. So I didn't know they shot in Miami also. That's crazy.
They shot a lot of it, certainly on a soundstage in Miami.
Yeah. Was it always supposed to be Frankie Muniz also?
No. Yeah. No. I mean, in bed. Well, Frankie Muniz in bed with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
That's a different movie.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. No, I think I know whose story that would be, but we won't say. So I wanna talk to you about what you're up to now, but I also don't necessarily want to be like, okay, let's fast forward through 23 years. So when you look somebody up, the IMDb page has a lot of stuff that has been developed. Is there anything that you've worked on recently, recently the last couple decades that it's you talked about how you wish that Dragnet 2 had gotten made. Is there something that you're like, oh, we were this close, I wish I had been able to do this? I saw you were tied to developing a police academy possible reboot at one point. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was delightful. I've worked with Brian Levant a bunch of times, and he's a friend, and we had, I've worked on several scripts with him. And Brian comes from television. He was a writer on Happy Days, and then a producer on Happy Days, and he loves a writer's room, which is very different than most directors of movies. They don't want that, but Brian likes and a writer's room is a whole special thing. It's a whole different energy and a whole different kind of camaraderie and everything than writers, who go. There aren't a lot of. I've been looking for writing trios, and there aren't a lot of them. So I think we were kind of a little more unique. They're duos, but not trios. But so Brian wanted a writer's room to write a reboot of Police Academy, and we did it, and it was and we said, let's write a script that will feel like when you take this movie off the shelf and put it in your VHS, that's what it'll feel like right from the 80s in terms of the sensibility of it. And I think we did a great job. It was so much fun to write. And the producer of the original of all of them, Paul Maslansky, was sitting in the room with us every single day. And at the end of when we were finished with the script, he said, "This is the most fun I've ever had in my entire life." And he he also had fantastic ideas. Like, usually you don't want the producer there. They're just a pain in the butt, and they're adding nothing. They take nothing from it. And, they take nothing, they give nothing to it and take everything from it. He was wonderful. Such a great guy. I wish that movie had gotten made. I know we did it for Warner Brothers, and at a certain point, they contacted Netflix. This is how it was going to get made. Netflix said, "We'll make it, but we also want to be able to show all the other Police Academy movies on Netflix." And Warner said no. So it just kind of got squashed. But that was a great script. Another weird one that we did was that I did with a different writing. I've written with I've had four, Peter and Bobby. Then after Peter and Bobby, a guy named Mark Stylen, who wrote and produced the movie Tag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Mark's a great guy. And then Rick Kopp, who wrote the Brady Bunch movie. And then my last writing partner, who I wrote with for 15 years, James Johnston. And we wrote a bunch of stuff together that got made. But one of the things we were hired for, we sort of got a career doing direct to DVD sequels, and they wanted to do a Marley and Me sequel, and we came in and we went, "The dog's dead."
Yeah, I was gonna say,
what do you want?
I believe I saw the sequel to that, Bennett. It was called Pet Sematary.
I know, that's what I was about to pitch that, Christian.
Sorry.
And so we're like, okay, so we came in and we pitched an idea. We said, how about it's a Marley adventure that you didn't get to see before Marley died. So it's and they were like, we like that. So we wrote it, and that was pretty funny. But then they ended up going with, they saved money by hiring a writer director who wrote his own draft of a whole different Marley movie, and they made that. But that was kind of fun. But that wasn't a lost opportunity. That was just yeah.
So, and at what point does Dumb and Dumber 2 actually start to gain steam? It got talked about for a little while, and I was telling Bill before we started, I was like, "Oh yeah, that came out a few years ago," and I was like, "Oh no, that came out 11 years ago." I didn't realize it had been that long.
Is that shocking or what?
Yeah.
I know. Because I measure everything by Dumb and Dumber 2 as well. And
Dumb and Dumber 2 is older than both of my kids.
Yeah.
My son will turn 10 this year. So yes.
It's like a sundial, So that was, I remember we were writing in 2012. 2012, I guess what happened was, first of all, New Line kind of wanted a sequel pretty soon. But then they thought, because Jim Carrey, by the way, when Jim Carrey was signed, New Line wanted to wait to see how The Mask did. And at that point, Jim Carrey's, after Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, or after Ace Ventura and The Mask, his quote was $700,000, and we said, you should sign him now for $700,000. I mean, get him now. Yeah. Don't wait. And they waited, and then it ended up costing them $7 million. It kind of went up a little bit.
I'm not good at math, but that seems like not a great
I'm pretty
deal.
sure that that is more. Yeah.
and the budget of Dumb and Dumber was $17 million. So $7 million of it was Jim Carrey. So they were concerned about how much it would cost them to do it. So they came to us instead and said, you know what, we're going to do it. We want to do a prequel. We want to do Lloyd and Harry in high school. And we were like, but they're adults who act like kids. It's not funny when they're kids acting like kids, So we said no to that and passed on that. And then what happened was, and then they went ahead and made their own version of it. Which,
we'll pretend that didn't happen.
We will pretend. Yes. Yeah. I every other week I go to hypnotherapy to.
I believe a lot of people. I believe a lot of people pretend that didn't happen. Yeah.
It's still no. And so in 2020, I guess Jim was on vacation in Hawaii. And it was on TV. It was like, whether it's cable or something, it's still on flights. It's still, I can't remember what airline, United or American. It's still on on airlines. But he watched it and he thought it was hilarious. And he called up Peter and he said, "Hey, let's do another one. I would love to do another one." And then Pete called me up and said, "We're doing another one. We're doing another one." So that was thrilling. And that was. The writing of it was, for me, that experience was very exciting because, as I told you before, without getting into it, I'm sober. I'm in a 12-step program, and the idea of making amends is a really important part of if you work this program. And I was able to make amends on Dumb and Dumber 2 by being absolutely at the center of that movie from beginning to end, whereas with Dumb and Dumber, I was on the sidelines for parts of it because I was so scared that if a spotlight was on me, people were going to know, oh, this guy is incredibly high or whatever. I was just so to be able to do Dumb and Dumber 2, to be able to get a do-over in your life like that was amazing, astonishing, and that's why it's so satisfying for me that I had so much fun writing it and making it and being in the center of it and being sober and being able to bring all my strengths to it. And it was fun. And what's weird is that I think what happens when movies are a hit or they're famous is that people integrate the characters. They take them personally, and they have a personal relationship with them. And the original came out in 1994. And people, that was Bobby's wife there in that shot. I still remember when Pete came up with this idea of it all being a gotcha joke, and he pitched it to me, and he just jumped up. We were trying to figure out the opening of the movie, and he just jumped out of his chair and went, "Gotcha!" And there was like a 3-second beat where I'm like, oh my God, I love it. I wish people could have been there. But what was I talking about? I don't know. So
So you were talking about being more involved, at the center of it, like you said.
What I was talking about was that people took these characters and they have a personal relationship with them. And so we made the movie. Oh, you almost saw one of my I have 3 cameos in this.
Oh wow!
Yeah. It got to a point where Pete kept saying, Barney, they call me Barney. It's a long story. He goes, Barney, get in the background. And the crew said, stop it. Peter, he's been in it People are going to figure this out. But so when Dumb and Dumber 2 came out, people were so excited about it. They went to see it, and we got a lot of negative feedback from people who love the first one. And we were like, we didn't do anything differently here. It's like we wrote a movie that we thought was funny, and we thought we knew the characters and everything else. But again, people have kind of, I think 20 years later, maybe the idea comedy changes or whatever. So to try to do a 1994 comedy in 2014, some people just didn't think that it was a good fit anymore. But we had so much fun. It was such a pleasure for us. As you can see, it's such a highbrow entertainment.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly. And it's, I think that obviously that is one of the things you run into, is just sort of the changing in the expectations for what is okay, what jokes are like, oh, wait, are we allowed to make this joke? Oh, who do we have to hire to make this joke okay? And, sort of all those things. But that was at least long enough ago where it's not like if you guys tried to crack that nut today. But I'm glad to hear that it was a good experience. And
it was such a great experience. And I remember the first day, Jim had been filming already, and then Jeff had just won the Emmy for the newsroom.
Right.
And he came. The next day he arrived at the set, and it was his birthday, so he came and we had a big birthday cake. We sang happy birthday, and then he plopped down into his chair and he goes, I just won an Emmy. Let's make this fucker. That was great.
It's funny that New Line didn't make the movie, right? That Universal released it, and then
yes, New Line, because it was going to happen at Warner Brothers, and because New Line was subsumed by Warner Brothers, and then and they kind of backed out, and so we took it. We had it financed independently, kind of, and then Universal released it. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Right.
Well, they missed out.
And I believe Jim also made more than $700,000 on the sequel. I haven't checked the books, but I'm fairly
he probably
sure.
did.
Yeah, considering you don't get represented by Jimmy Miller and take a pay cut. So. Well,
by the way, wait, you mentioned Jimmy Miller.
I mentioned Jimmy because I worked with his brother Dennis for 20 years, so I worked that in there.
He was sitting. I think it was Jimmy sitting next to me during the very first screening, like a rough cut of Dumb. This is when the toilet scene was twice as long,
which Woody Allen could not watch.
Which Woody Allen could, yes, it was twice as long, and you can actually see extra footage of it on I think there's a DVD.
Yeah, the unrated. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. I remember.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
But where he literally takes the toilet apart and takes it to the window and is like emptying it out the window. And I remember he turned to me and his face was white. He said, "You're cutting this, aren't you?" Yeah, we're cutting it all. It's all good.
Well, I wanted to take some time to let you talk to us and our audiences, plural, about what you're up to these days, Bennett.
I'll tell you very quickly. So at the end, just before the writers' strike, I basically, at the end of 2018, I had two dreams when I was a little kid. One, I wanted to write movies. I fantasized about writing movies. And the other dream was that growing up in Southern California, I loved Disneyland. I wanted to be an Imagineer. I wanted to make rides. I wanted to be the people who created the stuff at Disneyland. It was so fascinating for me. And so I got to write movies, and I got to actually have a little bit of an impact doing it, and had a career doing it, which is astonishing to have the career that I had. But it was reaching a point where I kind of felt like I was aging out, and so I thought, well, what do you want to do instead? What would you do? And I'm like, well, your other dream was to make rides. I mean, I don't know. I can't be an Imagineer. I don't have any engineering skills whatsoever. I can't be an Imagineer. And I said, but what? I don't know. Maybe do they use writers in creating these attractions? I called a friend of mine who was in the themed entertainment business. He had just come back from Abu Dhabi, where Warner Brothers opened up this $4 billion Warner Brothers World. And I said, Taylor, do you use writing? Right? Do people come from film and television into the themed entertainment world? And he said, all the time. He said they're called show writers, and yeah, I mean, every attraction requires a writer, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
Well,
oh my.
I mean, I never thought about it, but it makes sense because
And they're movies, you
I'm
know.
fairly sure that the guys from Aerosmith didn't write their script from the Rock and Roller Coaster in Orlando.
Yes,
I don't think
yes.
Ileana Douglas wrote it either. She plays their manager.
But somebody did,
Yeah.
yes, right. And then they performed it. And then somebody has to be involved in the whole process of creating it, because those attractions are mini movies, you know. Oh, there's my favorite ride, the Haunted Mansion. So remember that. So at the end of 2018, I said I went to my writing partner James. I said, James, I'm gonna leave this partnership. I love you dearly, but I want to see if I can get involved in themed entertainment. And he said, go with God. I know how much you love that. And so I left the business. I kind of retired from screenwriting. And in 2019, I spent the whole year meeting everybody in the business. I had a great email that got me in. It got me into Imagineering as well. The day I walked into Imagineering was one of the greatest days of my life. It was the most exciting. It was like a fantasy come true, you know. And got myself on the map. And there's a little company called Super 78 that brought me in to do a punch up on an attraction. So I actually had got an experience doing it. And then going into 2020, I was on the map and everything. And then we hit COVID, which killed everything. So I got to work on one project which I loved doing. It was in an aquarium in Galveston, Texas, and they had like a 4D movie theater, and the 4D is it was themed to SpongeBob SquarePants, but they were losing that IP, and so they were getting 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was public domain because of Jules Verne, and they brought me in to do a comedy pass on it, and I had so much fun, you know, but everything closed down and then it started opening up again. So here I've got two things that I'm doing right now. One is, okay, that was a long setup to explain what.
No, it's fine. It's interesting.
So one thing is
now you've made me feel like I might need to go to Galveston sometime.
Let me know how it is, because I've never seen.
He's never even been there.
And prepare to get wet, because that's the 4D part. You know,
okay.
It springs a leak, and okay, so. But so just before the writer's strike, a spec script that I had written with my writing partner James like 10 years ago, this director bought it just before the strike. So it literally hours before the strike. So that script, which was called, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. I'll give you the title of it.
Untitled.
Right, Untitled, right. Oh, Traction. It was called Traction.
Okay.
And it's about a young girl who wakes up and finds herself in traction. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know who she is. And something doesn't want her in that room with her. It's a supernatural thriller. No. And it's now he shot it. It's made, and it's called Day of the Dead. And so he's just finishing it now. But that's coming out whenever he finishes it. I don't know if it'll be streaming. He's very happy with it, so he wants to try and get theatrical. So we'll see. But that's called Day of the Dead. So a movie that I wrote 10 years ago got made and is coming out at some point, which was astonishing to me.
And nobody had to bother Eddie Murphy while he was washing his car.
No one.
To get
not
no one.
A single person. Right. And then in terms of themed entertainment, so about a year and a half ago, I've had an idea in my head for an attraction, a unique attraction that has not been done, and it's been running around in my head, and it is Halloween based. So it's like the Haunted Mansion, my favorite ride.
Christian, there you go. Thank you.
There you go. Right. I couldn't wait I was so excited when it opened. I begged my dad, take us to Disneyland, and I was so excited. It's such a part of my childhood. Anyhow, so about a year and a half ago, I've been thinking about this idea in my head, and I said, you know what? Now is the time, and I've learned a lot about the business too, about themed entertainment and who's making what kind of attractions, and also what the technology is. I learned so much about that. I called a friend of mine who works in themed entertainment, and I said, let's go to dinner. I took him to dinner, I told him, here's this idea I've had. I've had it since 1992, and it's just been percolating. And I said, now is the time to do it, because Halloween is becoming such so popular, and Halloween themed things have become so popular. I pitched him the idea. He said, that's the best idea I've ever heard. I said, Robert, do this with me. Let's do it together. So we've been working on this attraction for a year, a little over about a year and a half. And it's the most fun I have ever had doing anything, because it's completely blue sky. You know, we're like, I'm like, we can do whatever we want as long as it's organic to the concept of what we're doing. And I've never had more fun. And I don't want to say anything about it, except we put together a little teaser to send out to people, and people are really crazy about this thing, which blows my mind, because we've been developing it. I just wanted to do it. I just said, now's the time to do it. Let's do it. And by doing it, what we'd end up with is, like, you know, essentially a pitch deck of what this attraction is, you know, because pitch decks are how you sell movies now. You know, everything gets sold by, it has to be, you have to present it, and you have to basically take someone's hand and say, this is what it is, and this is what it looks like, and this is how it's done. And but the reaction to just the little teaser has been so astonishing from people who are interested in investing. I'm like, what this, all I want to do was have fun. I just wanted to do this. And the moment someone pays you, of course, it goes from fun to responsibilities, you know. But that's I'd be thrilled to take on a responsibility processing this and pursuing it, because it's a dream project of mine. So that's in the midst of happening. We'll have it finished, at least this phase of it, easily within a couple of months, and then probably our hope is to get it financed to take it to the next phase. You know,
but that process seems like it would take longer than this Halloween, because that's like now 4 months away.
This is huge. I mean, this is multi-million-dollar.
Great.
And it could be built anywhere. It doesn't have to be at a theme park. It's also adults only. It's adults only.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not
have you considered Galveston? I don't know why. I'm just wondering.
well, you know, Disney just announced they're going to be building a park in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is opening up huge. You know, Six Flags is going to be open at the end of the year. They're opening up a Six Flags Qiddiya. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because obviously all these things, you know, translate literally and transfer, you know, beyond cultures. Just due to a weird fluke, the first Disneyland I ever went to was in Tokyo, because my friend went to high school there. So I'd never been to Disneyland, Disney World, anything. And I was like, oh no, I think I get it. I think I understand that this ghost is riding in the car with me. So I can see that. Something you were saying about the aquarium in Galveston, you know, it had been SpongeBob themed. And it made me think about, there's two rides that this made me think of. Here in LA, the Back to the Future ride was converted to the Simpsons.
Yeah.
But it's the same track. It's the same ride. So you're like, okay, yeah, you can do whatever you want as long as it goes on this track, and there's the drop here and there's the drop there. And similarly, you know, Disney just did the rebranding of Splash Mountain from Song of the South to the Princess and the Frog. So I feel like it's like, the sky's the limit, but not really. You have to drop here, and it's going to be 50 feet, not 51 or 49. So I hadn't really thought about it till you started talking about just how much goes into that. And I assume it's probably harder, like make your Simpsons story match up with Back to the Future, you know? So.
Well, the thing I didn't realize until like recently, and again, because I did it just to do it. I just was passionate about this thing, and it had been in my head for so long. And I said, at the end of this, I just want this thing I can hand to somebody and say, I co-created this ride that I've always been thinking about. It's not, excuse me, I shouldn't say a ride. It's not a ride. It is an attraction. There are ride elements in it, but it is an attraction. And I don't want to say any more because there are very unique things about it. Very unique that haven't been done yet. That's the other thing. I said, I kept waiting for someone to do this, and it hasn't been done. I'm like, how can this not have been done yet? And so that thrills me. But I created the whole it's an enormous backstory to it. And it wasn't until like a few weeks ago when people responded so strongly to the teasers, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is more than this is, because of the backstory and everything. This is a video game. It's a movie. It's a TV. So like it's an IP. That's what blew my mind. Like, it's an actual original IP. And at that point, I was like, wow, there's the potential for monetizing this. And I'm not going to get in the way. I'm not going to say, no, you know what? I just wanted to do it for fun. It's okay. We don't have to make money off of this. It's not fair to my partner on it.
It's $700,000 and that's it. I don't want a penny beyond that.
Exactly. But I want it to be fun.
I mean, and sort of what you're talking about, there's sort of this like next level of attractions implemented with rides.
Next level is exactly what
I was thinking about at Disneyland. The more recent Star Wars ride they have called Rise of the Resistance. It's like you're on a ship and then you're out of the ship and you're, talking to stormtroopers, then you're on another ship and then you're on this. And it's also why that ride breaks down all the time, because there's like 4 or 5 different things that have to all work in sequence. And it's like, it is interesting because at first I'm like, you mean I have to get up? And I have to walk somewhere, but it is kind of cool. And it's like, it seems like they have fun and they use this weird, like, new magnet technology. I don't even know how these rides work.
Feel like you're on the set of a Star Wars movie. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So something that we could all pretend to be George Lucas. Bill, what do you think about that?
I love it. I like him.
I will say about ours that, and it is literally as though you are living a movie, because you are absolutely a part of it. You're a huge part of it. I have to like stop myself from saying more.
No, sure. No.
And I'll tell you this, in terms of, because we said it's for adults only, it's pretty much like if you were living the movie Poltergeist. That's the energy of it and the kind of what the intensity. It's not like one of these mazes where you're walking through it and people are coming out and screaming at you. Oh no, nothing like that. It's way more.
As long as I get to be Craig T. Nelson, I'm in, Bennett. So that's
there you go.
I've always wanted to be Coach. Well, Bennett, it's been delightful chatting with you about your multiple careers, about attractions. And I didn't know we were going to talk about Galveston. We said Galveston like 5 times. It's been a while since I've talked about Galveston.
Say it again. Get an even 6.
Get an even 6 there in Galveston. Yeah. Shout out to Jimmy Webb talking Galveston. So I don't know if you're out there on any social media platforms, if there's places where people can look for you, but let us know if there's anywhere that they can find you.
I think I'm on Facebook, and also, what's that other one that I never check?
Blue Sky.
I've heard
Instagram. Okay.
Instagram. Yeah, I check it every
when you said never check, I thought, well, it's either Threads or Blue Sky, but yes, Instagram.
Not yet. Not on Blue Sky yet, but yeah.
True Social.
Honestly, I haven't signed up for Truth Social yet. It's on my to-do list, Bill. Right after I sign up for Parler.
Every time when I do look on Instagram, I find I have 15 porn requests for like porn groups to join.
Those are all from Bill. He just thought you'd be interested.
No, they're usually 30. My time, yeah. So
I usually send 30, Christian.
Yeah. Well, he's showing some restraint.
They're getting filtered out.
Yeah, damn it.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. It was
awesome.
Thank
you both. Bill, nice to see you again.
As we cross-promote for the multiple channels we were on, check out my podcast, The Bladtcast, BLADTCAST, and Bill, Grit and Script, and Stump the Bill. Let everybody know where they can find all your great content that you're putting out there.
On the Flickaholics channel, please.
Yes, Flickaholics. Some of you are watching it there and you're like, yeah, I know I'm here. But that's the whole point in putting it on both channels. Thanks to everybody who's in the chat. Thanks to Bennett. And we will see you all at the movies, as Siskel Ebert used to say.
Never heard of them.
I love how much they hated each other. But anyway, that's a show for another time. Thanks again to Bennett. We'll see everybody soon on my channel. We'll see you next time on The Bladtcast.